Welcome to this deep dive, and
Yeah,
we're going to be tackling one of the big ones today. One of those questions that makes you go, "Huh? What is reality?"
it's a big one. It is.
Mhm.
But I think we're going to try to make it bite-sized, you know,
Yeah.
starting with something we all know, an apple,
Hmm.
red juicy. Maybe you have one for breakfast.
Right.
We're going to use this simple apple as a springboard
Hmm.
to explore some pretty wild ideas from
Yeah.
both philosophy and science.
And our sources for this one take us from, those classic philosophers like pondering life in their togas all the way to kind of mind-bending physics that might make your head spin. But
They might.
we're in this together.
We are in it together. This is a journey.
Yeah.
And the journey starts with a seemingly simple question. Is an apple real? I mean, you can touch it, you can taste it, but what does that even mean?
Right.
This is where philosophy steps in.
Yeah, and one of the first stops on our reality road trip is Plato's Allegory of the Cave. Are you familiar with this one?
Oh, yeah.
It's about these prisoners who spend their entire lives seeing nothing but shadows on a cave wall, thinking that's the whole
All
world.
there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Plato's point was that what we perceive as reality might be like those shadows,
Hmm.
just a limited glimpse of a much bigger, more complex picture.
Mm.
Our senses might be fooling us.
Okay, that's already making me question my snack choices. But wait, it gets weirder.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources point out that animals see color totally differently than we do. Like a bee sees ultraviolet patterns on flowers that are invisible to us.
That's right. Yeah. It's like each species is living in its own custom-made visual simulation. You know,
Wow.
your reality
Yeah.
quite literally isn't the same as a dog's reality or a bird's reality.
So what you're saying is my apple might look delicious to me, but to a bat, it's practically broadcasting on a different channel?
Exactly.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So the takeaway here is that even something as basic as color is just our brains interpreting information. It's not necessarily an objective truth about the apple itself.
You got to, that is a really good way to put it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's where science comes in, trying to unpack
Yeah.
what our senses are telling us.
Right.
Our sources talk about the poet John Keats, who was a bit bummed when Newton explained light through physics,
Yeah.
basically unweaving the rainbow, as Keats put it.
I get that, some things just seem more magical when you don't know how they work, but I guess understanding that magic on a deeper level is its own kind of awesome.
It is. It is.
So how do our eyes make sense of all these colors?
Well, this guy Thomas Young figured out that we have 3 types of color-sensitive cells in our eyes.
Okay.
They work together like a team, mixing and matching signals to create the whole spectrum of colors we see.
So it's like our eyes are mixing colors like a painter's palette,
Yeah.
and the final masterpiece is what we perceive as reality.
Right, and that reinforces the idea that even though we experience the world as solid and out there,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is actually being constructed inside our own heads.
Whoa. Okay, I'm starting to see things a little differently already. But if you think that's mind-blowing, just wait till we start talking about Einstein.
Oh, yeah,
He basically ripped apart our comfy ideas about time and space.
he did. He sure did, until Einstein came along.
Yeah.
Everyone pretty much assumed time and space were these fixed, absolute things,
Yeah.
like a universal clock ticking away for everyone at the same rate.
Right.
But Einstein's theory of relativity totally flipped the script.
Yeah, one of our sources mentions this experiment from 2023 where astronomers actually measured time dilation in distant quasars. And you know what they found?
Yeah.
Time ran slower in the early universe.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
That's the thing about Einstein. He comes up with these wild ideas that seem impossible.
Right.
And then decades later, scientists find ways to prove him right.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So what we learned from Einstein is that even time, something we think of as, this absolute thing, is relative to your perspective.
It is. Yeah, your frame of reference.
So there's no universal, no, my now could be different from your now, depending on where we are and how fast we're moving.
Precisely. There is no universal now.
Wow.
It's all relative.
Oh, okay.
And it gets even weirder when you start to consider black holes.
Oh, boy.
Their immense gravity warps space-time so much that time practically stands still near the event horizon.
Yeah.
So imagine being close to a black hole while someone else is far away. Time would be passing at drastically different rates for each of you.
Hold on, my brain needs a minute to catch up.
I know.
I think I'm starting to get... We can't take anything for granted, not even something as fundamental as time.
Yep.
And if that wasn't enough to shake up your reality, just wait till we dive into the world of atoms. Okay, so we've gone from questioning the color of an apple to questioning the very nature of time.
Right.
Now we're going even smaller
Yeah.
to the building blocks of everything atom.
To the building blocks.
You know those tiny things we learned about in school?
Yeah.
Turns out they're even weirder than we thought.
Oh, yeah. Way weirder.
Yeah.
Think about the early 1900s. There was this scientist, Ernest Rutherford,
Uh-huh.
and he did this experiment where he fired tiny particles at a thin sheet of gold foil.
Okay.
And guess what? Most of them went straight through. Like, the gold was practically empty.
Wait, what? So it's like shooting a cannonball at tissue paper
Yeah.
and having it pass right through.
Basically. Yeah.
But we experience the world as solid.
Right.
How does that even make sense?
That's the wild part. Rutherford's experiment showed that atoms are mostly empty space. What we perceive as solidity is actually the result of forces between those tiny particles within the atom.
So my apple, which feels so firm in my hand,
Yeah.
is basically a bunch of empty space held together by invisible forces.
You got it.
I'm telling you, the more we learn about reality, the
Yeah.
less I feel like I understand anything.
But that's the beauty of it,
Mhm.
right? There's always more to discover, always another layer to peel back. And speaking of peeling back layers, let's dive even deeper into the atom, to the realm of electrons. You remember those little guys zipping around the nucleus?
Yeah, they're like the planets orbiting the sun, right? At least that's what I learned way back when.
Well, not quite. It turns out electrons don't behave like tiny planets at all. They're more like fuzzy clouds of possibility.
Fuzzy clouds.
Yeah.
Okay, now you've really lost me. What's fuzzy about an electron?
This is where we enter this strange and wonderful world of quantum mechanics.
Okay.
In the quantum realm, things don't follow the same rules we're used to in the everyday world.
Yeah.
Electrons, for example, exhibit something called wave-particle duality.
Okay.
It's like they can be in multiple places at once, spread out like a wave.
Hold on. Are you saying an electron is both a particle and a wave?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Think about light. We know it acts like a wave, right? That's how we get things like rainbows and diffraction patterns.
Yeah.
But light can also act like a particle, a photon.
Okay.
Electrons are similar. They can be a tiny point of matter or a spread out wave depending on how you observe them.
So it's like if I look at an electron, one way it's a particle, but if I look at it another way, it's a wave.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah.
That's seriously messing with my head.
I know, right? Quantum mechanics is full of these mind-bending concepts. But here's what's really crazy, because electrons can act like waves. They can do things that seem impossible in the classical world, like tunnel through barriers.
Tunnel through barriers, like teleport through walls.
Kind of imagine you have a wall and you throw a tennis ball at it.
Yeah.
Normally the ball would bounce back, right? But if the tennis ball were an electron, there's a chance it could actually pass right through the wall as if it tunneled through it.
Okay, that's just plain spooky. So you're telling me the atoms in my apple, the ones that are mostly empty space, are made of these fuzzy electrons that can teleport.
Yeah, pretty much.
This apple is way more complicated than it looks.
It is, and all of this strangeness led to some serious head-scratching, even among the greatest minds in physics.
Okay.
For example, did you know that Einstein actually disagreed with some of the implications of quantum mechanics?
Really? I thought Einstein was all about bending the rules of reality.
He was, but even Einstein had his limits. He famously said God does not play dice because he couldn't accept that the universe could be fundamentally random, as quantum mechanics suggests.
So Einstein thought there had to be some underlying order.
Yes.
Some hidden variables that would make everything predictable again.
Exactly. He believed that quantum mechanics was incomplete, that there had to be more to the story. This led to some fascinating debates with other physicists like Niels Bohr, who championed the probabilistic interpretation.
But didn't experiments eventually prove that Einstein was wrong? At least on some of these points?
Yes, one of the biggest sticking points was this concept of entanglement, where two particles become linked in such a way that they share the same fate, even when separated by vast distances.
So you're saying if I have two entangled particles and I do something to one of them,
Yeah.
the other one instantly reacts even if it's light years away.
That's exactly right.
Isn't that faster than the speed of light?
That's exactly what bothered Einstein. He called it spooky action, at a distance. He thought there had to be some hidden communication going on, something we weren't seeing, because how else could they be in sync like that?
But the experiments, they actually proved that entanglement is real, and it does happen instantaneously regardless of distance.
Yes, and this is where it gets really mind-blowing experiments, including one called the cosmic bell test, using starlight and quasars,
Wow.
confirmed that entanglement is a real phenomenon. It implies that the universe is non-local, which means that things can be connected to influence each other instantaneously, regardless of how far apart they are.
Whoa, okay, so my apple with its atoms and its entangled particles is somehow connected to everything else in the universe.
It seems that way.
That's kind of a beautiful thought,
Yeah.
but also a little scary, don't you think?
It's definitely a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And it raises some profound questions about the nature of space-time and reality itself. But before we get too lost in the cosmos,
Yeah.
let's bring things back down to Earth, to something a little closer to home.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you to be real?
Now you're getting personal. I'm not sure I'm ready to question my own existence just yet, but I'm definitely intrigued. Where do we even begin with something like that?
Well, one way to approach the question of you is through this thought experiment called the ship of Theseus.
Okay.
Imagine a ship that gradually has all of its parts replaced over time.
Yeah.
Is it still the same ship?
Hmm.
If every plank, every sail, every nail is eventually swapped out, does it fundamentally change the identity of the ship?
That's a good one. It's kind of like that question, if you replace all the parts of a car,
Right,
is it still the same car?
right.
I guess it depends on what you consider to be the essence of the car or the ship, right?
Exactly. And it gets even trickier when you apply it to humans.
Yeah.
Our bodies are constantly replacing self.
Right.
So are you still the same,
Yeah.
you from 10 years ago, even though none of the physical matter is the same?
Oh,
What
yeah.
makes you...
That's heavy stuff. Makes you wonder what really matters, the physical stuff or something more like, I don't know, a pattern, a soul, an ongoing story.
Yeah.
Our sources touch on this idea of consciousness, which seems like a key piece of the puzzle.
Right.
But what even is consciousness?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Is it just a byproduct of all those neurons firing in our brains?
Uh-huh.
Or is it something more fundamental and maybe even separate from the physical world? Some scientists believe that consciousness could emerge from any sufficiently complex system, even artificial ones.
So you're saying a computer, if it gets sophisticated enough,
Yeah.
could actually become aware, like have its own thoughts and feelings?
That's the idea behind emergent consciousness, and it's pretty wild to consider. On the other hand, there's this idea called mind-body dualism, which goes way back to philosophers like Descartes.
Okay.
They argue that the mind is a totally separate entity from the body.
So like our bodies are physical machines,
Right.
but our minds are something else entirely. Maybe even non-physical. That's starting to sound a little like, I don't know, ghosts in the machine.
I know it's a tough one to wrap your head around, but here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Ready for a mind bender?
Yeah.
Some people think our entire reality might be a simulation.
Wait, a simulation? Like we're all just living in the Matrix?
Exactly. That's the simulation hypothesis.
Mhm.
The idea is that our universe could be a giant computer program created by some super advanced civilization.
Okay.
Everything we experience, our thoughts, our feelings, our entire reality would just be lines of code.
Okay. That's either the coolest or the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. So if we are in a simulation,
Yeah.
does that mean free will is an illusion? And what about the meaning of life? Does any of it even matter?
Those are some of the big questions the simulation hypothesis raises. It makes you wonder, who are the programmers? What's their purpose in creating our simulated world? And are they watching us right now?
Okay, now I'm definitely getting creeped out, but one of our sources takes this idea even further, talking about the mathematical universe hypothesis.
Oh, yeah.
What's that all about?
That's a truly mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
It suggests that the universe isn't made of physical stuff at all. Instead, it's pure mathematics.
Wait, so instead of atoms and particles,
Yeah.
we're made of equations and formulas. Is that what you're saying?
In a way, yes. It's like the universe itself is a giant mathematical equation playing itself out.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it means there could be an infinite number of other universes, each representing a different mathematical possibility.
Infinite universes. My brain is officially fried. But there's one last concept our sources touch on that I have to ask you about, this idea of Boltzmann brains.
Oh, yeah.
They sound kind of terrifying.
They're definitely a bit unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
Boltzmann brains are hypothetical conscious entities that could spontaneously pop into existence in a random fluctuation of energy, even in the vast emptiness of space.
So like a disembodied brain just suddenly appears with thoughts and memories and
Yeah.
then vanishes again.
Pretty much.
That's both amazing and terrifying.
And the really wild part is that, statistically speaking, it might be more likely for a Boltzmann brain to exist than a whole universe like ours.
Really?
So there's a chance that we're all just temporary fluctuations in the cosmic void.
Okay, that's officially too much for me to process. I think I need a break from reality for a while.
I hear you. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We started with a simple apple and ended up questioning the very fabric of existence.
Yeah,
But even though we may not have all the answers, one thing's for sure, the universe is a far stranger and more wondrous place than we ever imagined.
absolutely. We've explored color time atoms, consciousness simulations, even disembodied brains.
We've been everywhere.
And while it's mind-blowing, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Me neither.
So as you go about your day,
Yeah,
take a moment to look around and appreciate the mystery of it all.
it's all a mystery.
That solidity you feel, that sense of self, that flow of time, it's all a lot more complex and amazing than we realize.
It really is.
And who knows what incredible discoveries are waiting for us just around the corner. We'll be back soon to dive into another fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious.